Stand in the light and be seen as we are. So stand in the light and be seen as we are.
This is Mark Feuerstein, and May is NF Awareness Month.
Make NF visible.
It's my honor to be here. It's my honor to say hi. I love you. And all of you with NF, I see you.
The Duke Energy Cincinnati sign was lit blue and green this morning and yesterday morning to raise awareness for NF.
Well, tonight you may have seen a sea of blue and green in Detroit across the night sky.
Desde la ciudad de Chicago, en la conferencia anual de neurofibromatosis de la Fundación Infantil de Tumores, les saluda el Dr. Fabián.
This has not slowed you down.
Moving forward and thriving and have resilience. There's a lot of things people with NF have.
It is my privilege to be here this evening alongside CTF's 2023 World NF Ambassador.
Our total match for the night, $100,000. I am just absolutely blown away by the generosity and blown away by these stories.
So we greatly appreciate the City of Cedar Falls recognizing and proclaiming May as NF Awareness Month.
If I had to describe NF in 3 words, it would be audacious, unique, and powerful.
I think it's unique because those with NF have different symptoms.
Something people can't see about my NF is I have stuff like scars from the numerous surgeries I've had.
I have learned over the years to take one day at a time.
I want you to treat me with respect. I want you to see me and see NF.
I want you to see me, and I want you to see NF.
And I want everybody to see NF, and thank you.
Welcome everybody. Storytelling session today. This is the place to be. I'm sure the other session's great too. Hello. Okay, thank you. Welcome to the storytelling session. I'll repeat myself. That was I didn't even know that was the video we were going to play leading into this, but it was the perfect segue because you saw storytelling in so many different forms. Thank you. Hey, you took the worst one. There we go. All right. Thank you. We're good. So that video shows storytelling in all its different forms, and as you're about to find out, a number of the people on this stage actually helped with a lot of the pieces that came together there. Storytelling, whether it's to an audience of 1 or to 1,000, is important. It informs, as we want everyone to know about NF, of course. It inspires, as we saw the reactions in the room, the cheers for the places you're from, and the stories that people told. And it motivates, which also happened in this room, and that motivation can be anything from just informing people, but also to taking action, to advocating, to donating, since we need that too for NF research. So we've got a really amazing panel today. I'm not going to talk a lot because these are the expert storytellers. I'm not going to even do long intros because you should hear their stories from them. But just very quickly, by the way, I just realized I didn't say who I was, just in case you don't know. I'm Simon. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for the Children's Tumor Foundation. So starting on the end of the table, it's Melissa Brunner. She's a award-winning journalist and news anchor from Topeka, Kansas, WIBW. And then we've got Craig Warga from Brooklyn, New York, a award-winning photojournalist who will also tell us his tips. And then right next to me, we've got Matt Hay, who is a patient advocate, an author, marketing guru, a lot of things, and a bit of a mentor to me too. I bounce a lot of ideas off of him. So we're looking really excited to hear from all of them. So we're going to start with Melissa. The format will be each one of them will do a little bit of a presentation and a storytelling of their own. And then we'll open it up to questions. So feel free to start thinking about what you'd like to ask these folks. So Melissa, we'll start with you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for including me in this. And what's kind of neat is that each of us have different personal connections to NF, and that's why we're on this panel, which is why would they bring someone from Topeka, Kansas? Isn't that little town in the middle of wherever? And yes, we are right in the middle of the country. We are home to both, well, not specifically, but we cover University of Kansas and Kansas State University, so Jayhawks and Wildcats. My slides have a little bit of bullet point information, very technical stuff we're going to go through so that you know how to reach out and tell your story. But the best part of every story is the why. And so my why, I have to hit the button, right? Okay. This is my why. This is Owen. Owen is my nephew. He has NF1 diagnosed when he was an infant. He is 21 years old now. He's been through 4 rounds of chemo in his life. Most of his tumors are on his brain. The one that's most annoying for him, if you will, is the one on his thalamus because that does cause him to struggle with seizures. So that is Owen, and that is my why for how I came to know what neurofibromatosis even was or meant and how to pronounce it. So when you're trying to tell your story, what are we looking for in the media? Well, first of all, we need to know about your story. So reaching out and telling us is the first element. What do we need in a news release? The basics, the who and the who. So the who is who you are, but also maybe we might need to know who you are, because you might know that it's really cool because your event is going to include an appearance by Michelle Holbrook. Well, if the person reading is like, okay, that's great, but if they know that Michelle Holbrook is the 2023 CTF National NF Ambassador, that adds a little bit more weight. So sometimes we need to know the who is in that news release in giving us the information. And then, of course, the what, the where, the when, the why. Why are you doing this, and how are you going to do this? Beyond the basics, make sure there's a contact name and phone number on there. Can we reach you there on the day of the event? Perhaps your event says at 11 o'clock you're going to have this program and presentation. Well, in a newsroom, as you might imagine, sometimes things come up at the last minute. We often can't make decisions on what we're going to cover until day of because, the bad guys don't always plan when they're going to do their bad guy stuff around the community, and so we have to kind of fit that in. So if we can reach somebody on the day of the event and say, hey, you said you were going to start this walk at 11, it's 11:30, we're on our way, are you still there? That can increase the chances that someone's going to be able to make it. Photos, maps, graphics, when appropriate, are helpful. Beware of insider lingo. What is SB 423 anyway? Well, I can tell you SB stands for Senate Bill, and 423 is the number of that Senate bill, but I can't tell you off the top of my head what it does. So sometimes if you're referring to things like NF, CTF, if we don't know what those acronyms mean, it's going to be somewhat meaningless. So make sure if you're using anything like that you explain that. Update contact information, and also explain why this event matters. We're having the NF Shine a Light Walk. Why does it matter? It's raising money for CTF, Children's Tumor Foundation, one of the leading organizations in supporting families who live with NF neurofibromatosis and research into the condition. So those are all very good things to include beyond the basics. I told you I'm going through all this fast because we got a lot to get to and we want to make sure we get to your questions. Allow advance notice for your event. Maybe send the initial news release about you. Sometimes people think they have to send their news release 6 months in advance. The reality is it can get lost in the shuffle. So you don't want it to be too far in advance. You don't want it to be too late notice as well. So perhaps an initial news release a week or two before the event, we can get it in the file for the day. Send a reminder the day before just to make sure. That way if we don't have it or it somehow got lost in the shuffle, we can re-get it in there. If your event is happening over the weekend, don't let us know about your Saturday morning NF walk Friday at 4:30, because we tend to plan the weekends especially out in advance. Same thing if it's a Monday morning news conference, proclamation, presentation. Make sure that that information has been sent out quite a bit before. Avoid morning notice for same-day event. And even if your CTF walk is on the third Saturday of September every single year, staff changes over. We don't necessarily remember that, oh yeah, it's the third Saturday of September, we better make plans to cover that. Even for an annual event, make sure you send that notice out. If you think I'm telling you these things and they're super common sense, this is an actual email received in our newsroom. Our boss keeps a file of these things. You will notice this was sent Monday at 9:53 a.m., letting us know about this photo op for 10 a.m. We didn't get there. 7 minutes notice, that's, not reality. So those things do happen. We understand sometimes there are problems, and you might think on Monday morning, I forgot to let them know about this thing we have going on at 11. You can make a phone call to the newsroom, that's fine. Maybe they can get there, maybe they can't. But the great thing too is that you can send photos of your events, and if we can't get there in person, sometimes a news organization will pick that up, especially since everybody has websites and social media now. If it doesn't necessarily make it on the air in an actual broadcast, it may still get in the social media feed and on the website, which is additional exposure as well. Putting it in writing is always good. Email is best. You can use a phone call for follow-up. The person that you want to direct the information to is usually in a newsroom, the news director or the assignment editor. Most news stations will have that contact information on their website under a Contact Us, or on their social media page, a Facebook page. There's a way to contact. But if you have a story that you want to tell, and it's maybe more specific, maybe there's a medical reporter, someone who regularly does a health story. I do a weekly health story, and so sometimes people will reach out to me directly if something has a health or medical related topic. That's a great person to reach out to about an NF story, especially during NF Awareness Month. You can let people know this is going on, or in February, at the end of February, Rare Disease Day. All of those are opportunities to pitch a story about NF. Avoid social media only notices. There's a lot of noise out there in the social media world, and we may not see that in our feed, especially the way algorithms work these days. You're not necessarily seeing everything. For example, and this is actually dated because I put this together about a year ago, Facebook gets 300 million posts and photos a day, 510,000 comments a second. Twitter has 456,000 tweets a minute going through. Instagram, 95 million photos and videos a day. YouTube, 500 hours of video uploaded every minute. That is a lot of noise. And the trick that we're trying to do is give you some tools to kind of cut through the noise and make sure you're being heard by your local media and your local communities. Who are you is the key question here. We're talking about making it personal. And I can tell you that making a story personal is the best way for it to get heard and to get through all the noise. It's great to have Simon say, this is what CTF does, this is what NF does. It's great to hear Annette Bacher talk about CTF, but the people who make an impact are all of you, the people living with it and your families, because you can tell us better than anyone what NF is and making NF visible. There's a video I want to show, and I'm going to give you just a little bit of a backstory here. This is the scariest of all, the live interview. And I host a daily, Monday through Friday, community-oriented talk show. And when NF Day was coming around, a mom reached out to me. And the backstory is her dad was a local fire chief. And when I had posted something about Owen on social media, he messaged me and he said, that's what my grandson has. And we hadn't heard of anything about this until my grandson was diagnosed. And so I reached out to the mom and I said, do you guys want to share your story at some point? She wasn't comfortable then, but this year, a few weeks before World NF Day, she said, you know, I think that we're ready. And there was a specific reason that she and Dylan were ready. Dylan is in 6th grade, about to go into middle school. So let's watch the live interview, and then I'll talk a little bit more about it after.
Thanks so much. May is NF Awareness Month. NF stands for neurofibromatosis. It is a group of genetic conditions causing tumors to grow on nerves. And we have nerves all through our bodies, right? Well, it affects about 1 in 2,000 people. Dylan Podorf of Topeka is one of them. He and his mom, Sarah, are here with us today. Welcome to both of you. Yeah, Dylan's giving a wave. I'm glad that we can have this conversation because as a lot of people know out there, my nephew, Owen, who's now 21 years old, also has NF. He has NF1, Dylan. So that is where this conversation comes from, because I know what neurofibromatosis is, but a lot of people out there don't. So first of all, Dylan, tell us about yourself. How old are you? Where do you go to school?
I am 12 years old and I go to Northern Hills Elementary School.
And what sorts of things do you like to do with your time?
Usually when I go to the school, I usually get some math and stuff like that in ELA and science. But I'm kind of doing good in the school years until our promotion.
What about summer vacation? What do you have planned for that?
Ooh, someday we might go on a trip.
She's looking at mom with that.
And my mom knows what it is because we might go there sometime.
All right. Well, we hope you get to go on that trip. Yep. And it's fun, Sarah, to hear Dylan talk because it's just, he's a normal kid. Mm-hmm. And the thing that NF and the Children's Tumor Foundation, one of the organizations that works to research NF and support families like yours, like my sister's, is to really make NF visible. That's the hashtag. So if you had to explain to people how NF affects Dylan, what are the sorts of things that maybe people can't see?
With him, I would say the most, the things that you can't see are you can't see the, now I'm getting nervous.
It's okay, but does he, so first of all, we talk about tumors on nerves. Where does Dylan have tumors?
So he has some that have come up on his back and on his belly. He had one on his knee that he actually ended up picking off last summer.
It's just a tiny little thing.
Yeah,
and you're right, because some of the tumors are tiny little bumps, tiny little growths. My nephew has what they call cafe au lait spots, little brown patches. You have one on your arm. I can see it, actually.
Right here.
Just right there.
He's got some on his knees. Most of them are on his belly, groin area, under his arms.
And in other people, it's more obvious. Other people have tumors that can be very disfiguring. Some people have it become so involved, it leads to perhaps limited use of limbs, or they may lose their limbs. It can be difficult sometimes with Dylan because people don't necessarily see that he has something that affects him.
They don't. And the other things that they don't see are he has what they call UBOs on his MRI scans, and they're just called unidentified bright objects. It's white, hyper-illuminated white brain matter. And those come and go. They generally shrink over time, but they do cause cognitive delays, learning delays, things like that. That's where they don't see what's going on as far as the physical aspect of it goes.
What do you explain to people NF is, Dylan?
I usually tell them, people don't, when I tell them I have NF, they really don't care about it, and they just like to constantly, people like to hurt my feelings in the school year sometimes because they don't know what I have when I have NF.
That it affects you, and it can make some things more tough.
Yes.
And that's why we're working to make NF visible, so people understand that there's something that you're fighting and living with and trying to overcome every single day, and we're very proud of you for that. How much does that, I mean, that's really hard to hear.
It is.
I know for my nephew too, he's 21, NF for him causes issues with seizures, he can't drive. You know, you want to be a normal kid, you want to be a normal young man.
Yeah.
So what do you hope people see when they see Dylan?
I just want them to see a strong-willed, kind-hearted boy, just your typical 12-year-old. He does have difficulty making friends because of the cognitive and social-emotional delays, but I just want people to see him for him.
How much does he get monitored because of his NF? I think that's important for people to know too.
Quite a bit. We maintain an IEP at school, which he gets pull-out time with a special ed teacher, generally about 45 minutes a day, give or take. Depending on how his day is going with peers, social interactions and such will also depend on whether or not he gets pulled on an individual level from class, but
I would say big thing is just ask, right?
Yeah.
just ask so folks can get to know Dylan and get to know what NF means and how it affects people every single day. People have a chance to do that. This Wednesday, by the way, is World NF Awareness Day. The Children's Tumor Foundation will have a live streaming event, Make NF Visible. It's 7 o'clock Central Time. I've been honored to be asked to join in co-hosting that, so we're excited. ctf.org/live. And also, Dylan, we were able to confirm that your lights are going to be back at Evergy Plaza this year. Evergy Plaza in downtown Topeka will light blue and green in honor of World NF Awareness Day. Dylan and Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your story. We appreciate you being here and talking about NF with us.
So I can never not request the city of Topeka to turn on the blue and green lights because Dylan said they are his lights. So I can never disappoint Dylan again. But the specific reason that they wanted to raise awareness was because of that one answer Dylan gave that I did. It broke my heart when he said it, and breaks my heart for all of you and all you parents that have to go through that people make fun of him. They wanted people to know what it is he's dealing with, and so that's why they decided to talk. So the live interview is frightening because, yeah, it's live. Sarah froze. She said, oh gosh, I didn't know what to say. Most cases, if you're not comfortable with a live interview, people record interviews. In most cases, we're doing stories that we edit, so if you freeze like that, you can just go back and say it again. So that's how we got to know Dylan. There is a bit of vulnerability here, and that's why it took them a while to be able and open to tell their story. But just make eye contact. My husband, Doug's our chief photographer. I tell people all the time to ignore Doug and just look at me and ignore the camera, poor guy. You don't have to be a scientist. You heard in those answers, they were very simple. It's more about getting to know the family, getting to know Sarah and Dylan. Have some talking points if that helps you to go through, and remember, there are no wrong answers. Nobody during an interview is asking you to make a 15-minute speech. You can just get right to the point and give your answers, and it's fine. And we'll have questions later. That was a lot to get through.
That was great.
Sorry, guys.
That was really terrific. Thank you. That was amazing. As somebody who used to work in a newsroom for many years, that was like such perfect practical advice for how to get good news coverage. It was amazing. My name is Craig Warga. I am first and foremost an NF dad. My son Aiden in the back is 16 now. We found out he had NF when he was probably about 6 months old, excuse me. And the first initial, as soon as my wife and I found out, we got online and we started Googling around, and we started to see a lot of photos that were frankly terrifying. We hadn't seen a doctor yet. We knew like this was coming for us, and we were really scared. My line of work is I was a photojournalist for many years. I worked for the New York Daily News, traveled all over the world for them, covered 9/11 when that happened, Hurricane Katrina over the years, things like that. And my career has always been telling stories through images. And when I saw the images when Aiden was first diagnosed, I was terrified. Then we went to my doctor, Dr. Caleb Yohei, who I know is floating around the building somewhere. He said, don't go online. He was like, absolutely do not go online. He said, you're going to see the worst case scenario of everything. He said, there's two things that happened. He said, just basically let me tell you when to worry, and I'll tell you what to research. He said, the vast majority of people with NF live perfectly normal, happy, healthy lives with some bumps in the road. And I just didn't feel like I saw that represented in the images that were online. And I think pictures can inform how we interpret a story a lot. So I always thought it would be fun to show those people with NF living perfectly normal, happy, healthy lives. Not sugarcoat it, not make it out to be, something that it's not, but to show these people with NF who live perfectly normal lives. I coincidentally met Rebecca at the CTF, and we talked about this, and that's how I teamed up with the CTF. Before I go any further, I really have to thank Rebecca and Simon and Vanessa at the CTF, because I've done a lot of this work, but these guys have done just as much work behind the scenes to help line up people. So when I first started volunteering with the CTF, we wanted to show these people in their work environment, in their home environment, living their happy, healthy lives. So here we have a school teacher and a lawyer. 2 people who had been living with NF for, oops, I'm going backwards, look at that. Normally on the other side of this, guys, sorry. This is another gentleman who, Adam. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Oh geez, I'm a rookie. Yeah. So I'm sorry. So we have a lawyer and a school teacher here who have been living with NF for quite a while. This was the first campaign that I did with the CTF. We called it This is NF, and it was showing people in their surroundings, in their life, environmental portraits, showing people, you know, a little bit more in the wild and in their regular lives. This was Adam, great guy. She was a photographer. Her story, oh my gosh, she was dealing with issues with her left hand, so she could only photograph with one hand, and she showed me how hard she worked to be able to operate a whole camera with one hand. It was amazing. Yeah. We know this guy here. And Ken on the left is an attorney, and he's active with the CTF. So we did these portraits, and then when NF Awareness Month came around, we put them out on social media all month, and I think we got a pretty good reaction out of it. I think people liked seeing it. It's all about, you know, putting out positive imagery of people with NF, and yeah, that's what I wanted to see. So maybe it's a little selfish, but anyways, from there we went on and we started doing the Make NF Visible campaign. And one of the things that Simon and I talked about was NF is kind of a hard disease to raise awareness about, because you can't point to one person and say, oh, that's what NF is. You have some people who you would never know it by looking at them, and you have other people who are very seriously afflicted. So we tried to do a campaign that showed the scope of what NF was, and that was Make NF Visible. So this is some of that work. We set up a studio in New York. We had people come in. The first year we did this was right before pandemic hit. And I think, oops, sorry. Some of these were from this year. And we've, yeah, I think we've gotten a lot of good reaction out of this. But I really believe that, you know, you can read a brochure and you can read about facts and figures and you can read about numbers, but what really grabs people is seeing people, you know, seeing faces. You know, we have a mom and her baby boy who both have NF. You know, I want to help those people when I see those pictures. I hope it raises awareness, and I also hope it's comforting for people with NF too to see. These are some of the slides that they put out across Instagram this year during NF Awareness Month, and they've actually partnered with a billboard campaign across the country and gotten some pretty good billboard placement out of it over the last year too. So that's about it for me. I'm going to pass it on to Matt.
Thanks, guys. My name is Matt Hay, and I was diagnosed with NF2 in college, so I'm rolling on about 25 years with NF2, and just that statement in itself feels like a win. So I wanted to share a little bit about storytelling from a patient perspective and somebody that spent a lot more time sitting in those chairs than this chair. When I was diagnosed, like probably many of you, it took me a year to pronounce neurofibromatosis and another year to spell it. And I wanted to learn more about the experience from another patient, and I asked my physician in 1998 if he could introduce me to somebody else, and he said no. He didn't know anybody to introduce me to. And in those 25 years, I've had about 20 surgeries, and it took me a decade to get to a point where I felt comfortable enough to get to a point where you guys are. And I remember walking into an advocacy event in Chicago, and I walked in there. It was like a movie where somebody walks in and then pauses, and then they walk back out. I literally backed out and got in my car and went home. I wasn't ready to be there. I wasn't ready to think about my story or share a story. So I'm going to sprinkle in some kind of things that I learned along the way, and one of those is, if you have interest in sharing your story, do that on your time. There's no schedule. There's no, I should be doing that more, I should be doing that less. You are the ones that define when you are comfortable sharing that. A year later, I went to the same event, and this time I walked in and I still felt very uncomfortable. I had facial paralysis, I was deaf, I didn't go out and meet people. This was a horrible environment for me, something that I actively avoided. Why would I choose to do that? And I could hear enough now with my new implant that when I walked in that time, there's a mom. I made it to the hello, my name is section where you put your name on a sticker. And I was about to leave again. And a mom stopped me and she had her hand on her son's head and she said, do you have NF? And I said, well, I have NF too. And she said, so does my son. I've never met an adult with NF too. I'm so glad you exist. And that was a pretty powerful moment for me because in my mind, when I thought of storytellers, I thought of people on the news and people that are storytellers. And you see them on stage and they're smooth and gifted. And I thought, I'm not that. But the lesson to me that day was at that point in my journey, my story was to exist. I was telling a story to that family that you have reason to have hope. You have reason to think about, I'm there with a wedding ring and a work bag and car keys. You have reason and hope to think about marriage for your kiddo and college and work and not just how do we get through this week. And at the time, that was my story. You guys being here, this is your story. And hopefully you get a little bit more comfortable sharing and meeting new people and you share a little bit about what you're going through and you learn a little bit about from them, a little bit about them. And that gives you a little bit more confidence of saying, you know what, these people get this and they're listening to what I have to say and maybe they're laughing or they're making eye contact. And it allowed me to gain a little bit more comfort. So I sort of accidentally became a storyteller at NF patient advocacy events. And you guys are the ones that gave me the confidence to understand that my story was of value to somebody else. And to a point where I felt guilty not coming because I knew there might be another mom or dad who have never met an adult with NF2. As I got more involved with that, the first public speaking event that I did was at the 2011 CTF Summit. I didn't get to do the keynote like these guys earlier today. They gave me the night before dinner, which is sort of the practice run. And you haven't invited me back, other than until now.
I think this is a pretty good spot here.
But it took me a decade to get to a point where I was comfortable to be in this chair. I was a lot happier being in the hallway, chatting with someone one-on-one. So through that process, a couple things that I learned, and then I want to wrap this up to make sure we have some time for questions.
Take your time. No, we're good.
Is, one, I thought it had to be perfect. And you know what? You lose a little authenticity when it's perfect because it doesn't feel real when it's mistake-free. So lean into those mistakes. That's what makes you different. There's nothing, I can assure you, there's nothing special about me, or maybe I'm no more special than any of you. We are all capable of doing this if it's something that you choose to do. A mistake I made too is I got through some of the really hard times of NF by being kind of annoyingly positive about it. It was just my coping mechanism. I would tell my story and my wife would say, you made your NF journey seem kind of easy. And I was inadvertently really telling my story in an inaccurate way. It's okay to share your lows, but share your wins too. Those are good storytelling. I mean, you don't watch a Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan movie with it all being negative or all being positive. At some point, the bookstore always burns down, but then eventually they fall in love. So in your story, it's okay to have those highs and lows, and people want to hear what's hard, but they also want to hear, is there something that you overcame? So something just to think about as you're crafting. Because I think there's two pieces, and I think storytelling and advocacy go hand in hand. And when I think about advocacy and the way I tell that story, really think about what your story is, because you can't be everything to everybody. Are you talking about overcoming disability? Are you talking about perspective of life in a wheelchair and changes that people might not expect, or challenges people might not expect? Are you talking about deaf awareness? What is the story that you really want to share? And then it's just a matter of finding the confidence to share that. And that does sound oversimplified, but that was for me. What's my story and the confidence? I think we've all met people that have plenty of confidence but don't really have anything to say. And then I've met a dozen people here that have a wonderful story, but they tell me they don't have the confidence to say it. Working to find those two, when those two circles overlap, that's when you're going to be asked to be on this chair. And it really is that easy, of having that confidence that your story has value and needs to be heard. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Simon.
Sure, I'll turn it over, and if people have questions. What I'll say before we take the first question is, so you heard sort of a common theme, I think, through everyone on here, but if in sort of quick snippets, Matt is talking about, do it on your own time. So when you're ready, you're ready. When you're not, and that's okay. Through Craig's photography and the storytelling, it's let's represent NF in all its forms, and that's something we really care about and are careful about. And also trust, I think something that is common with all of these folks and with Melissa's work too is very often we're grateful that a lot of people raise their hands within this community to take part, but it's also because you trust. So when you're in front of the lens, Craig's lens or Melissa's camera, the fact that you trust these folks to share your story and knowing that people's conditions change over time is really meaningful and helpful. So we thank everyone who's participated and will participate. And then as Melissa was saying too, she didn't use these words, but I'm extrapolating, don't worry. Don't be nervous, or it's okay to be nervous, but you've got folks around you who care about you and will help you get your story out. A quick little story, something we encountered with some of our Make NF Visible videos. I'm not going to call this person out because I adore her, but we had played a video for a person, and she got back to us and she said, "Oh my gosh, just the most amazing video. I love what you're doing. I cried. My husband cried. Our cat cried. What do I do now?" And so, of course, my first reaction was, well, donate. Thank you very much. But also it was, we do this for the sake of doing it, for basically spread the word. Get this out there. Take the video. Take what we're doing. Take what our community is pulling together, and please share. And that's what she does. So if she sees this, she knows I'm sharing that story out of love. So, but let's open it up to the floor, because I'd love to see if people have questions for our panel.
You talked about taking pictures of individuals with NF and coming into New York. Do you go anyplace else? Because I'm in Washington State, and I would love to do that.
Well, I go to Phoenix. We're actually set up around the corner today. We're going to be shooting there for the next 2 days. I've traveled around the tri-state area a little bit, but I haven't traveled much outside of there. I can't say that we won't travel someday, but right now we don't have any plans. I would love to, but it's all about organizing it with CTF and trying to time it to a place like this where we're set up here for Phoenix. So, because I know that has been one thing that we've actually struggled with over the years, because it would be nice to get out to different parts of the country, and that's pretty much the reason that I'm here today.
So can she go around the corner and get her picture taken?
Please do.
Yes, come by. Yeah, we'll figure out. So we, just so you all know, all the photography, imagery, videography, billboards, everything we do is free. We don't pay for billboards. We don't pay, we might do some minimal travel, but we try to really stay true to our mission of having the funding that you all raise for the foundation go to research. But we also know marketing and communications is important, so we do allocate some. So the shoots happened in New York because Craig happens to be in New York, and there are a lot of New Yorkers with NF, but we'll certainly look at that for the future. And yeah, if you have a moment, we'll try to get you in there for a camera. We'd love to have you on camera. Thank you.
Hi, Matt. My name is Christy Moore, and stand that way, please. And I'm going to put him on the spot. This is my husband, Hank, and he has NF1. And when he's out telling people his story, he feels bad and guilty. And I ask him why he feels guilty and bad. And he goes, because he doesn't have it as worse as others. And I try to tell him that his story may get to someone that doesn't know about NF, or a family member or a friend has NF. And I know you mentioned that you feel guilty in the past. Can you please give him some encouraging words and some kind words and advice of what he can say to others where he doesn't feel guilty or anything like that telling his story, because he's got a great story. I love the way that he talks about NF. So, and I'm sorry, I'm fixing to cry. And he's just wonderful, and I just love the way he tells his story, but he always tells me he feels guilty. Can you give him some advice on just to go ahead and tell his story and not feel bad about it or anything? I know he would love to hear words from someone who has NF. So if you would do that, that would be awesome.
Man. Thank you. That's a great question, and I still deal with that. Sometimes I feel guilty not telling it, and sometimes I feel guilty telling it because it depends on the circumstances of the audience. This is just my belief. Every good story ever told in history was about overcoming some kind of challenge. Every one of them. Try to come up with a good story that doesn't have a challenge, and it's probably not that good of a story. So those need to be heard. And we talk about making NF visible here and NF awareness to be able to combine overcoming challenge and dealing with an issue while sharing your experience and creating visibility and awareness for your disease is kind of a perfect storm of three different things. And so there's no reason to feel guilty, especially in an environment like this. People traveled here. We got on a plane and we took Ubers and we waited in line to check in just so we could hear and share stories with one another. So instead, not only, in my opinion, should you not feel guilty, you should feel welcome and excited to share that because we want to hear that. And I know that's easier said than done, and that goes back to the confidence part, at least for me, of is my story worth being heard? And we're going to meet in about an hour after this. But I already know that your story is absolutely worth being heard because you at least have one person that is already excited to hear it.
Can I think your story is worth being heard too, just for the sheer fact of every time I tell a single person my son has NF, they go, oh, what's that? Nobody, pardon me, but not enough people in this world know what NF is. And if you can be an advocate for that, that's a powerful thing.
Hi, I have a question. I live in Columbus, and I know in Cincinnati they have the Shine Your Light Walk. And I wanted to do something in my own town. So is there any way or like step-by-step where I could possibly like organize my own walk for Columbus? Because I would love to. There's nothing really there for us. So I would love to be the first one or at least have help to try to organize one. Do you guys have any ideas or any advice for me?
So you should, we absolutely would love you to do stuff in Columbus. So you should definitely talk to our staff. I'm not going to start throwing names out here, but I mean, Lydia right next to you could probably connect you with the right person. So she'll get back to you quicker than I will, right? No, but so in addition to walks and runs and Cupid's Undie Run and all the wonderful programs that you'll find on ctf.org, we do also encourage people everywhere from the lemonade stand to things you do at work to school or any place where there's the ability to raise awareness about NF and funds, of course, but it doesn't always have to be about funds. May is also a good time, it's sort of a good anchor since it is NF Awareness Month and we do have a lot of messaging. So even just taking some of the videos you see, maybe even taking this webinar, which will be available online afterwards, and sharing it with people so that people can see other stories as well. So, but yes, please reach out, we'll connect you with the right folks. And you can get a proclamation sign, you can get a building lit up in Columbus. We'd love to have that if we haven't had that already. So absolutely.
That's what I was going to add too.
Please.
I know they can offer all the support, but Topeka was kind of the same way. We didn't have anything, and when I started seeing the Shine a Light things when the campaign started, I just made calls to people I knew that had buildings, and I said, like downtown has these arches. So I called the organization that's in charge of those. I said, do they change colors? Can you change them to blue and green? And they said, sure. So sometimes it's just making that first phone call. So if you want a proclamation, there's usually a constituent services, might be what they call it, but it's something in your mayor's office or city manager's office, and tell them that you'd want to see what does it take to get a proclamation issued for your city, and they can start giving you the advice. So even even if you don't get a major fundraiser right away, just one little thing for awareness that then you can put out to your channels, and then it kind of snowballs from there. At least there's something. I can tell you the very first year, we had lights in downtown Topeka. When I went down there, I told some of the families that I'd come to know. And I went down there real quick between newscasts because I just wanted to take some pictures. And they were there. And they traveled to another place that I had gotten lit up. It meant so much to them. And so that really touched me. So reach out to people you know who can help you, because there's going to be other people that it's going to touch just as well. And now they're Dylan's lights, so I have to keep doing it.
And no action is too small. So one of the reasons why, so the little secret, why did we start Shine a Light? Because besides everything Melissa just said, which is because it inspires, it makes people proud. Frankly, it's also a good media hook and a good community hook. It's the same reason for the proclamations. Again, it's going to be super blunt. Proclamations are not changing the world. And if you've been to those events, there's tons of proclamations that get read. But it's an opportunity to what Craig and Matt and Melissa have all been saying. And I agree with what Craig said 100%. Not enough people know about NF. We have only begun, frankly. So everything you can do to get that out is helpful.
I think we need to wrap it there. So thanks to Simon and our amazing panel. And if you have questions for them, you can put them in the Whova app. You can also see them right after.
Yeah, find us. Reach out to media@ctf.org if you've got any questions. And then I really do want to thank our panel, Melissa, Craig, and Matt, who all are here, not just for being on the panel, everything they're doing for CTF. Thank you.